people that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
He just tossed an air ball, like in a critical. You're up by 2 with 20 seconds left. He said, give me the ball, LeBron James, and he tossed an air ball. And there was AD under the bucket fighting everybody, and he ends up going to the free throw line. They use Tavares as a friggin' pinata tonight. Dude, I know you're old, but get it together. This is your last run at something, man. This is your career, bro. Don't go out like this. Oh, it's hard watching this.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
You're not going to get the Tiger Woods size audience. But do you know where they went? They went to Caitlin Clark. That's where those people went.
what?
Those people are now going to the WNBA. Yeah. The fan that only watches what's hot, the casual who doesn't really like sports but likes to be involved in the in thing, they're watching
cooler discussion.
They're watching Caitlin Clark.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
So I turned it off. I got my sweat done, and I'm leaving. I'm taking my money. I'm going home, and I don't want to talk to you for the rest.
Oh, yes!
There it is.
6-3. Catch the over. The over is hit. The Padres are our heroes.
That's how we end the show.
Oh, well, let's just sign off. Let's just call it a show.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Hour number 2 now officially underway right here on the Early Line Sirius XM channel 159 right here on the Sports Grid Network. It's Donnie Rightside, it's Davis Maddock, and over the next 2 hours now, boy, do we have a lot of guests to go over to preview NHL action, NBA action, PGA Tour, Major League Baseball. We've got you covered here. And also, did you guys know Thursday night, round number 1 of the NFL Draft? Let's take a little temperature check here, Davis. How are we feeling here? Are we confident for the draft Thursday, Friday, Saturday? Is all your studying already been done? All your bets fired? What's going on over there?
I mean, I think most of my bets are fired, although the 48 hours leading up to the draft is where we start to get real concrete leaks. Most of the stuff we've gotten up to this point is agent information, that is it's out for a reason, right? One way or the other, the agent wants his guy to this team, doesn't want his guy to this team, is trying to get his guy boosted up. There's stuff that we can glean from, official visits. Every team gets 30 guys legally that they can bring in and talk to, bring into their facility. I did see that Bo Nix is the only player in the draft this year that had a visit with every team, which I was like, what do the Chargers want with Bo Nix? What do the Chiefs want with Bo Nix? What do the Jets want with Bo Nix? Like, why is any of this happening? None of that makes any sense. I don't plan on firing a ton unless I see some exploitable spots over the next 2 days. One thing I think we could happen, that could happen, that could give us a real exploitable edge would be if Jaden Daniels gets to like minus 400 or something to be the second overall pick, and Drake May really falls. Like if you could get 5, 6, 7, 8 to 1 on Drake May to be the second pick, that's definitely worth a fire. Because every NFL insider, Schefter, Rap Sheet, all these guys, they are on record as saying no one from Washington is talking. No one from Washington, from the front office, has said one thing about, oh, we like this guy, we prefer this guy, this is who we want. It's all coming from Jaden Daniels himself and coming from Jaden Daniels' agent. And as I mentioned on the show yesterday, the fact that Marcus Mariota was signed to be the backup quarterback for the Commanders. So that is one spot I'm definitely looking at to potentially fire.
And also, it has been kind of odd because Washington brought in multiple quarterbacks for a night out of fun, and Jaden Daniels and his agent didn't really appreciate that night of fun. So certainly some other smoke screens going around. But let's take a look at yesterday. A tweet that came out from Ian Rappaport, which I mean, we probably expected this, right? Former Jets starting quarterback and number 2 pick, Zach Wilson, on the move, traded to the Broncos here, hoping for a fresh start. Now, the deal includes a late-round pick swap, a 6th for a 7th, and the Jets will pay some of Wilson's roughly $5.5 million salary. Talented kid nonetheless, hasn't worked out in the NFL. Maybe a fresh start under a quarterback guru can do him some good.
I would bet against it. I mean, I think that if I was forced to bet on one reclamation project between Wilson or Darnold, it would probably be Darnold. Like, at least it seems like Sam Darnold's coaches and teammates generally like him. Seems like the exact opposite with Zach Wilson. Seems like most of Zach Wilson's coaches and teammates are not that big a fan of him. So if you don't have the intangibles, if you don't have that locker room buy-in, I think it's hard. Now, Sean Payton might get a real kick out of trying to make Zach Wilson a reclamation project, because it is true, everything that people said about Zach Wilson as a prospect, like, he can make most of the throws, actually pretty much all of the throws. It's just the processing is not there. Really, actually not that dissimilar to Fields. Like, Justin Fields is this incredible athlete. He's got this great arm strength. Fields definitely does have the intangibles. Fields' teammates seem to really like him, but just the processing is not there. He takes too many sacks, plays too slow. Can Sean Payton fix that? I mean, I don't know. Drew Brees did not have the greatest start to his career, and then obviously ended up being an MVP and a Super Bowl winner with Sean Payton. But what this signing says to me is, I think they're adding someone else to this quarterback room, and they just want to have a competition.
And by the way, if anybody remembers Zach Wilson, and you're talking about being liked by your teammates, Zach Wilson got benched and the team entirely wore Mike White shirts on a plane with Zach Wilson still on that plane. Tough scene all the way around for Zach Wilson. Made a lot of money, hasn't done a lot in the NFL, and we'll see if maybe he can continue or resurrect, we should say, his career out in Denver. Let's take a look at the draft. Now, so much focus for us, Davis, obviously, and rightfully so, on the top 10. Movers and shakers in the quarterback position, who's trading up to get their franchise guy, who's going to get their franchise wide receiver, offensive lineman. You get the point here. 11 through 20 here, which starts with the Vikings, Broncos, Raiders, Saints, Colts, Seahawks, Jags, Bengals, Rams, and Steelers. Can we get some fireworks in this area? Or more importantly, of those teams, who's poised to move up and grab their franchise guy?
I mean, I think there are two teams here who are really poised to trade up. It would be the Minnesota Vikings that added pick 23, so they have pick 11 and they have pick 23 via the Jimmy Johnson trade value chart. That should be able to get them up to 4, where the Cardinals pick. That should be able to get them up to 5, where 4, where the Cardinals pick, 5, where the Chargers pick. Now, there's a real scenario where the players there are so good, they just might not want to trade, right? The Cardinals might be like, yeah, sure, you can offer us this value, but we just really want Marvin Harrison Jr. We think Marvin Harrison Jr. is immediately going to come in, be one of the 10 best wide receivers in the NFL. We've already got our quarterback that we're paying a bit, so much money to. Like, let's just go ahead and do this pick. And the Chargers, I could see Jim Harbaugh and the new front office for LA just being like, you know what? We're old school. We want our guy. We are just taking Joe Alt. I suppose the fact that the Chargers don't need a quarterback, and that the Chargers also might just be like, you know what? We don't really care about wide receivers either, because we're going to hand the ball off 600 times this upcoming year. So we don't really care that much about getting Malik Neighbors. Maybe we will go ahead and do this trade. I think ultimately the trade that makes the most sense for both sides is 11, 23, and a future something, maybe a future third, maybe a future second, to get to 5, where the Chargers are picking. The Minnesota Vikings select J.J. McCarthy. There also is a chance, I could be very wrong about the way that the NFL is viewing Drake May. I think Drake May is the second best quarterback. We're going to talk to Phil Simms about Drake May and these quarterback prospects later in the show. But there's enough chatter out there that the NFL does not love Drake May as much as I do. If the Vikings could get Drake May at 5 and do this trade, I mean, that totally, I think, to me, changes the direction of their franchise. That makes them capable, I think, of winning that division. I mean, I guess the difficulty is Caleb Williams is way better than Drake May and is going to be going to the Bears in that same division. But if they really, it's as black and white as this. If they can get Drake May with their available draft capital, you got to do that. You don't even think, you put the call into the commissioner's office and you get Drake May.
We know the big-time quarterbacks here that we're expecting to go possibly in the top 5, but other guys that had great college careers, which includes Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr., not a lot of hype on them over the offseason. So the question's going to be, each one of their draft positions is listed at 32.5, which means somebody's probably going to trade back up into the first round to grab those two guys. If we're looking at Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix, who's the first quarterback off the board between those two guys?
Yeah, I disagree with the market here. I've got the Bo Nix side of this one. I mean, Michael Penix is a sixth-year senior who had 4 different season-ending injuries. He would have been, an undrafted free agent, day 3 style pick. He had this crazy season at age 23, throwing to Rome Odunze, who's going to be a top 10 pick, Jalen Polk, who's probably going to be a second or a third-round pick, and Jalen McMillan, who's probably going to be a day 2 pick as well. So we basically had the best wide receiver group in all of college football. I think NFL teams are smart enough. I think we've learned enough about evaluating these guys that you don't make Michael Penix Jr. a first-round pick. I think these odds are wrong. I actually have the under on both of these guys to be first-round picks. Maybe that ends up being laughably stupid, but these guys are more kind of, Geno Smith style, first pick in the second round, third pick in the second round style guys to me.
By the way, quickly, why the drop on Michael Penix Jr., though? Just about a Heisman Trophy guy, busted a lot of records there. Why the drop? Is it just because he's a little bit older, or maybe you're just taking a look at he's too injury prone?
Bad knees, older, didn't really play that well until he was literally 23 in college. I think that's the explanation there.
Crazy times. Thursday night, round number 1, the best place to be right here on the SportsGrid Network. Let's talk some golf next. Keith Stewart joins the show. Scotty Scheffler, anybody? Yeah, what is that topic?
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
They're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
To the 2024 Stanley Cup odds, the Hurricanes remain the favorite, followed by the Panthers and the Rangers. Interesting that they all are coming from the similar side of the bracket.
While the Oilers have the top-end talent, I still don't think they have enough depth, and Stuart Skinner does not scare me in depth. So I would see a long series from the Oilers and the Kings, and ultimately I think the Stars are the ones coming out of the West for the Stanley Cup.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
The Philadelphia 76ers, who are the second best team in this Eastern Conference by a mile when Joel Embiid is healthy. And that's just what they are. So now, if Giannis isn't available, the Bucks would be dogs in the series.
He ain't sleeping on that air mattress anymore. He's got a regular king-size bed, a Posturepedic, whatever they call it, a Sealy's, whatever they do, those things. He ready to roll. Dominating tonight.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Hot topics all the way around right here in hour number 2, Sirius XM channel 159 on the SportsGrid Network. It's the early line. It's Donnie Rightside along with Davis Maddock, and we welcome in our PGA insider, Keith Stewart, to the show this morning. Keith, how are we feeling? Golf in good hands right now, apparently.
Well, I tell you, whether you're a fan of the LPGA or the PGA Tour, you got to feel pretty good. The alphas are out there, and they're doing their job. Nelly wins 5 in a row. Scotty wins 4 of his last 5, including a green jacket. It's pretty exciting times for golf.
No, it certainly is. And by the way, when we talk about having a PGA insider, sometimes we take a look back and say, well, what's that PGA insider adding to the benefit here of the Sports Grid Network? How about winners? How about last week calling the double-double here on our network, Keith? How about that?
Yeah, Carver, he said, what are we going to do with Scotty? He asked me every week, what are we doing with Scotty? So leading into last week, I said, you know what? I'm parlaying Scotty with Nelly. They're both basically untouchable at this point. I mean, Nelly's odds going into the Chevron, which was their first major championship of the year. She'd finished 3rd there the year before. Her odds were plus 550, and the next closest competitor was plus 2,500. They were 5X. Wow. And then, of course, we've seen what Scotty's done. He won the Masters by 4 over one guy and 7 over the rest of the field. I mean, he barely came in second in Houston. So I said, you know what? I said, the only way we can make some money off these folks is that we put them together, and I got 30-1. And guess what? It happened, which, to me was the least surprising thing of the week.
It was not surprising at all. I mean, Scotty he was down 7 strokes, I believe, after his round on Thursday, and everyone's like, yeah, I mean, look, we all know what's happening here. You can get odds now for Scotty to just win the Grand Slam. No big deal. Just win the single year Grand Slam. The FanDuel Sportsbook has him at 60-1. Now, I don't need to tell you. You'd be better off betting all of those as individual winners. You can get much better odds if you parlay them that way. Nelly is effectively doing the same thing on the LPGA Tour. I suppose my question for you, I think it's unquestionably good for women's golf to have someone being this dominant because it's just going to make someone more likely to flip the channel over there. But do you think that Scotty's dominance is as good for the PGA Tour? I mean, me personally, I'm going to watch golf regardless. I don't find Scheffler to be that inspiring or motivating. In fact, it's more frustrating because it makes betting these events so much more difficult. But do you think overall it's good right now in a very tenuous spot for the PGA Tour to have someone playing this dominant?
Davis, I think it's very good for the PGA Tour to have Scotty Scheffler be this good. And the reason I say that, 2 reasons. One, I'll use a golf example, and the first would be Tiger Woods. When Tiger was dominating the tour, there were a lot of people that were on the periphery of golf that would start to pay attention because these guys start doing historic things. And then the other thing would be, how about Caitlin Clark? I mean, when she started to dominate women's basketball, everyone starts to pay attention. So when golf is a different winner every week, or where we started this season out with like 7 long shots in a row, people just aren't paying attention. And then all of the conversation around LIV, and there's confusion and like who's on what tour and everything. Everybody knows where Scotty Scheffler's playing, when he's playing, and that's good for golf. And as far as, Wyndham Clark was in the press room last week, and he said, he was asked, do you think there's a gap between you and Scotty? And he said, reluctantly, yes, I think there is, but guess what? That makes me work harder. So if the next echelon of guys, that next class is working harder, the Cantleys, the Wyndham Clarks, the Xander Schauffele's, then it gets more and more exciting as we head into all of these major championships.
Keith, talk to me here about also the dominance of Scotty Scheffler, because once we used to see, and again, we're not really comparing him to Tiger Woods just yet, but Tiger-like, you can say, it used to be like, oh my goodness, you could hear Tiger Woods charging up the leaderboard, and everybody was afraid that eventually he was going to overtake the leader and win the tournament. You saw last week at the RBC, and if we even go back to the Masters, he's on baby watch here. One of the toughest tournaments that you can possibly win with other things on your mind. He won that. Flies home, flies back to the RBC, wins that. But the way he won it was unbelievable. It wasn't like he came out here, Keith, and was like, well, I torched round number 1 with 9 under. Round number 2, I went 7 under. I was in walking distance of just, passing through those final 2 rounds. He was down 7-8 strokes and still won by multiple strokes. It's unbelievable what he's doing on the golf course.
Well, if you look back to a year ago, just at the Heritage, between that Heritage and this one, he's had 21 starts. Of that, he's only had 3 of those finish outside the top 10. He's only had 6 of them outside the top 5. His level of consistency is unbelievable. And as a result, if you go back to the Masters, you look at the guys who are starting to play with him, he's starting to exert his dominance. He's starting to, make guys force the issue, that he's making guys play out of their comfort zone, trying to raise their own ceiling, of which maybe they just don't have the talent to do. He's become the marker. And, you go back to when Tiger was at his, his height of his power, everyone knew that, like, until Tiger teed off on Thursday, you just didn't know where you stood in the tournament, or until he teed off on Friday. And now Scotty is putting himself in that same position. Even though he only shot two under last week down there at the RBC in the first round, everybody knew they were just waiting for Scotty to put up a round and a number, so they knew where they stood in the tournament. And then when you play alongside him like Jordan did, I mean, it's just really difficult to try and keep up mentally, because you're like, geez, I have to be better. I have to be better. And it forces you to make decisions that basically you're just not comfortable with. So I love the fact that now that there's a total alpha dog out there, and on the lady side as well, that when you play with these people are starting to, fall by the wayside, or maybe they'll do something historic themselves, which is all really, really entertaining and exciting.
All right, let's go down to the Zurich Classic. This is, of course, our marquee team event here on the PGA Tour. Huge, unbelievable odds for Patrick Cantlay and Xander Schauffele. We've got Rory and Lowry after them. I've got a bet in on this event. Austin Eckroat and Chris Gotterup. What do you make of this event, or do we have any plays here?
I think we definitely have some plays here, but if you look at, they've done this team event for 7 years, and the average pre-tournament winner's odds is right around 30-1. So I think in that middle tier is where you're going to find your best value. For me, my early leans this week on the early line are two teams. I love Tom Hoge and Maverick McNally. McNally, top 10 at the Players. Hoge, what he did last week at the Heritage. And then my second team, I love the Canadian combination of Nick Taylor and Adam Hadwin at plus 4,000. I mean, those two guys, if you remember last year at the Canadian Open, when Taylor won and Hadwin, when Hadwin got tackled, trying to spray him with champagne, those guys have serious chemistry. And I think that's what you need this week to take home the Zurich Classic title.
There we go. We wrapped it around there. Keith Stewart bringing that heat here, letting us know what's up with Scotty Scheffler, what's up with the PGA Tour, and this week in New Orleans. Thanks, Keith. We'll certainly talk to you again. Up next, Nick Nurse. He's an angry guy. Come back and find out why.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
They're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The 2024 Stanley Cup odds, the Hurricanes remain the favorite, followed by the Panthers and the Rangers. Interesting that they all are coming from the similar side of the bracket.
While the Oilers have the top-end talent, I still don't think they have enough depth, and Stewart Skinner does not scare me in depth. So I will take a long series from the Oilers and the Kings, and ultimately I think the Stars are the ones coming out of the West for the Stanley Cup.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
The Philadelphia 76ers, who are the second best team in this Eastern Conference by a mile when Joel Embiid is healthy. And that's just what they are. So now, if Giannis isn't available, the Bucks would be dogs in the series.
He ain't sleeping on that air mattress anymore. He's got a regular king-size bed, a posturepedic, whatever they call it, a Sealy's, whatever they do, those things. He's ready to roll. Dominating tonight.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
We was robbed. We was robbed. That's what's coming out of the city of brotherly love last night. A couple late calls that didn't go the Sixers' way, but certainly when you play 48 minutes, it can't come down to just one or two calls here. You have the chance to change that over, Davis, those 48 minutes. But yesterday, the Philadelphia 76ers coming up short against the Knicks, now down 0-2 as they head back to Philadelphia. Now, before we take a look here what Nick Nurse has to say, did you feel that the Philadelphia 76ers were robbed last night?
I don't think you can say they were robbed. I mean, maybe
Yes,
they
you
have
can.
some
You
grievances. Maybe okay. Look, I mean, I think
there you
that at the end of the day, Tobias Harris is the one doing the robbing. He is robbing the great city of Philadelphia every single day. I think that is the man wearing the ski mask at the 76ers practice arena. It's like you know what it is. Anytime a team comes out of losing a game and your star player and your coach are complaining about the officiating, even if it's true, it's never a good look. It's just not. It's just the way it goes. It makes me sad, Donnie, but it is what it is.
Yeah, sometimes I like to fire out tweets, or I was about to last night, like, I'll take the Sixers losing this series in 4 games because that means Tobias Harris's career in Philadelphia is over and we can finally move on. Now, do I generally mean that? No. But can I be mean-spirited? Absolutely. But let's take a look at Nick Nurse, who was quite upset yesterday with some late timeouts that were not called up in the Garden.
Well, the first thing is obviously they score. We take a look at getting it in quick. We don't get it in quick. I call timeout. Referee looked right at me, ignored me. Went into Tyrese. I called timeout again. Then the melee started. And, yeah, I mean, I guess I got to run out onto the floor or do something to make sure and get his attention. But I needed a timeout there to advance it. Would have been good, but couldn't get it.
By the way, as a Sixers fan, I really like Nick Nurse as a coach, but he's one of those guys when he's with Toronto, Davis, I couldn't stand because he's always complaining on the sideline. Now, I like him as a complainer on the sideline for the Philadelphia 76ers, and he was right. You saw the still shots yesterday where he was calling timeout, but those calls get missed all the time. It's a 48-minute game here. You don't want it to come down to the end where you should have gotten a timeout, you didn't get a timeout, that's what lost the game. It's really not what lost it here, but having said that, Tim Bontemps reported yesterday, late last night, the 76ers plan to file a grievance with the NBA over the officiating across the first 2 games of the series. Now, as a Sixer fan, I agree. Like, this should actually be 2-0 76ers moving back forward. What are the chances, Davis, that both games get overturned in the Sixers' favor here? I think there's a pretty good chance.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can think that and you can hope that and you can wish that all you want. The chances of either of these things getting overturned or changed is 0%. Maybe it gives the 76ers a little bit more of a favorable whistle. I mean, that I guess that would be the thought process from the organization is if we really put this on Front Street, we file a grievance, we do X, Y, and Z, we get the NBA, in the last 2-minute report to say, we did the city of Philadelphia wrong. We harmed the legacy of Joel Embiid. We did not give the 76ers a fighting chance. Yeah, I mean, look, this is well-known NBA history that the commissioner's office will make sure. I mean, go look at the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers this season have the most favorable whistle. I mean, it's their free throw discrepancy between every other team in the NBA. It is unreal. It's definitely something that happens. No one wants to admit it, but it definitely does happen. The league will throw out Scott Foster when they really need a game to go one way or the other, which I guess is a good strategy. I mean, if you're feeling outmanned, outgunned, you think your guys aren't 100%, you don't think you're the favorite in the series, yeah, file a grievance. Like nothing bad can happen from filing a grievance, but I don't expect it to lead anywhere.
Now, let's take a look at the Philadelphia 76ers who were on the road last night in that 3-point loss. Usually when you hear about the crying about officials, the NBA never likes to be in the middle of that. And I'm not saying the refs sort of changed their game plan for the following game, but you saw the Sixers take 22 free throw attempts in that last game. If there was a bet out there, would the 76ers get more or less 3-point attempts in game number 3? I would go over the 22 attempts at this point here. So the Sixers going to have a chance to even up that series, but they need to win 2 games in Philadelphia just to get it even. Davis, let me ask you this question quickly here. Knicks win this series? Is it a wrap already, down 0-2? Or can the Sixers fight their way back here and at least force a game 7?
The 76ers can definitely force a Game 7. They have the best player in the series, and more often than not, I mean, it's not going to guarantee you a win, but it's going to guarantee you're drawing live until the very end. So I think I would maybe even take a bet on the 76ers series price right now.
Let's go. Phil Simms up next. Why? We're talking NFL draft. You want to hear from the two-time Super Bowl champion? He's right here on the SportsGrid Network. Stick around. We'll be right back after these words.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
They're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
To the 2024 Stanley Cup odds, the Hurricanes remain the favorite, followed by the Panthers and the Rangers. Interesting that they all are coming from the similar side of the bracket.
While the Oilers have the top-end talent, I still don't think they have enough depth, and Stewart Skinner does not scare me in depth. So I will take a long series from the Oilers and the Kings, and ultimately I think the Stars are the ones coming out of the West for the Stanley Cup.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
The Philadelphia 76ers, who are the second best team in this Eastern Conference by a mile when Joel Embiid is healthy. That's just what they are. So now, if Giannis isn't available, the Bucks would be dogs in the series.
He ain't sleeping on that air mattress anymore. He's got a regular king-size bed, a posturepedic, where they call it, a Sealy's, whatever they do, those things. He ready to roll. Denominating tonight.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Right back at it here on the Early Line Series XM Channel 159 on the SportsGrid Network. The NFL Draft Round number 1 is going to be Thursday night. And check this out. It's Donnie Rightside. It's Davis Maddock and two-time Super Bowl champion Phil Simms here with us on a Tuesday morning. Phil, how you doing?
Oh, man, I'm just doing wonderful. Flew in this morning. I had a great start of the day. But, no, it's all good. And you guys are all peppy and ready to go. So it's waking me up or getting me going. But everything's good. Can't wait for the draft Thursday night. I'm one of those guys. I probably will watch every single pick of the draft because, hey, what else do I got to do? So follow NFL football. A lot of fun to do. That's for sure.
Phil, let's go back to 1979. Times a little bit different than they are here in 2024. And with the draft coming up, it's so publicized now. How was your draft process being a first-round draft pick, top 10 draft pick in 1979? Was there, meetings? Did you fly in with teams? How was that done?
Well, I did have a lot of teams that came down to Morehead, Kentucky, and worked me out and talked to me. Back then I made visits to teams. I had they talk about pro days. I think I had about 15 to 20 pro days. I mean, every day it was just another team and get as many receivers you could get. We're going to throw and, whatever. But it was a great experience, a different world then. Can you imagine me in today's draft coming from Morehead State, Mel Kiper and that crew picking me apart? They didn't win when he was there. He can't, but it's so different now. It's unbelievable what they have to go through. And, of course, the way they play football now is entirely different than what I grew up with, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are they're put in the pipeline very young. A lot of these guys have been, doing 7-on-7 camps. We've known who Caleb Williams is since Caleb Williams was 14 years old. It's just a much different process now than it used to be. So of all these quarterbacks, we got Caleb, we got May, we have McCarthy, we got Daniels. Which one do you like more than it seems the consensus is? Are you a big JJ McCarthy guy? You a big Drake May guys? Any of them, in particular, your favorite relative to other people out in the NFL sphere?
Well, I don't know if it's a lot of difference. Listen, Caleb Williams to me is he reminds me of Patrick Mahomes when he came out. I remember watching him and going, wow, will this style of football work in the NFL? And I was a little leery of that. Well, we know how that's turned out. And Caleb Williams, I think he's a terrific thrower of the ball. Doesn't lose control of it. I can't even remember a play. I watched almost every one of his throws, it seems like, from last year. Just doesn't lose control of the football. Strong arm, big guy. He's 6'1", but he's just a big man. I've met him before. I couldn't. And I saw him play in college once up at Don Bosco Prep here in New Jersey. He was a junior in high school, and I went, damn, that guy's pretty good. And then I heard, well, he's already committed to Oklahoma. I said, yeah, I guess he's really good then. But him, Jaden Daniels, terrific. We all know that. I'm sure you guys heard it so many times. But the guy that's Jaden Daniels, his running, oh my gosh, he never gets pulled down from behind. His speed is underrated. I'm not saying he's Lamar Jackson, but he's not far off of it when you think about that. Doesn't have Lamar's powerful arm, but Jaden Daniels really groomed to be an NFL quarterback down at LSU. Pro offense, controls the ball again. His running it's elite, no doubt. So then after that, who's going to be the third quarterback? I don't know. If I had to guess, I'm going to say it's going to be J.J. McCarthy, that maybe New England or the fourth pick, somebody, they go up there and get him. This is just from watching TV. But I will say this, and I'm not trying to make these quick, that when J.J. McCarthy said he was coming out in the draft, I said, oh, my God, that's a huge mistake. He's not ready to come out and play in the NFL. And then as I started to watch him, I thought, well, he's going to go in the fourth round, somewhere in there. But then I started watching the games, really paying attention to him. And I can see why people like him. Athletic. He's got the right size. He's got a very strong arm. Probably one of the knocks I have against him, he has one speed. That's fastball. I mean, every throw it's a fastball. And I do like that. And, he'll improve in some of those other things as time goes on. But those are a few things. Bo Nix, I never hear his name. Do you guys? You talk about Bo Nix much? Man, I don't know what to say. There's nothing I can complain about. Oh, I wish his arm was a little stronger. Well, I watched a bunch of his tapes yesterday, again, just to go over it. Man, he makes all the throws. And, he shows power for him, moves around. Great decision maker. Probably the best decision maker in the draft, if you want to go back to their college careers, would be Bo Nix. So it'll be interesting. If we could see 6 guys in the first round, that wouldn't shock me, and we could see 4. But I think we'll at least see 4 quarterbacks go in the first round.
I find it pretty interesting, Phil, when you take a look at some of these prospects, because you just saw the Bo Nix graphic up there, 45 touchdowns here, 4,500 yards passing. He's been there, done that in college football. J.J. McCarthy wasn't asked to do that. 22 touchdown passes, let's just call it 3,000 yards. How can you evaluate moving forward to the next step? Is it all about numbers, or is it really the intangibles and how they actually project to an NFL game?
Well, hey, look, a lot of people make mistakes with quarterbacks. That's all I hear every time I turn the TV on. They make a lot of mistakes with offensive tackles too, and edge pass rushers. They think they're going to be Lawrence Taylor, and it turned out to be nothing. So it's hard to tell. But J.J. McCarthy, to play the way he did at Michigan, the lack of throwing. In other words, I say lack of throwing, but not throwing it 40 times a game like most of these quarterbacks were doing. That takes a lot of talent itself. It's hard. You don't get in rhythm a lot of times in game when you're throwing the ball so few times. And that kind of explains him a little bit. But again, as I went back and watched a lot of his stuff, and I watched him on TV almost every Saturday too. Man, he makes all the throws. He really does. And so it's got to be exciting to people. And I don't know what to say about all this stuff about their numbers in college. Judge their talent. How's it going to translate to the NFL? I can't, fault him for the play calling or anything like that. But J.J. McCarthy has a lot of talent, and I'm sure he's going to go in the first round. That was a terrible answer, but I was trying.
he does have a ton of talent.
It's really interesting to see that he out of nowhere he comes out, and here he is, could be anywhere from the third pick of the draft to somewhere in the first round.
It is pretty interesting just because he didn't have that many throws at Michigan.
Right.
Caleb Williams completed more passes in his 3-year college career than J.J. McCarthy attempted. I think there's sort of a little bit of, he's kind of like Trey Lance. He's a ball of clay for whatever coach drafts him to figure out. Not stylistically like Trey Lance, but just that he's definitely a little bit raw. So the last thing I have to ask for you here is, the rap on Drake May is that he kind of is a more of a thrower than a passer. The footwork isn't very good. Just there's some rough edges to his game. I don't really know what I'm watching. To me, Drake May, insanely exciting player. Do you think the rough edges on the mechanics is true for Drake May?
Yes, it is. Listen, boy, he's another one. He's getting beat up, and I don't know what why that is. Big, look, he's got a lot of things you love an NFL quarterback. Moves around well enough. He's a big guy. He has a very powerful arm. And when I always hear this, when everybody on TV, well, they got to work on the footwork. What the hell does that mean? They got to work on his footwork. That's, I always wonder that. They throw it out there. I always got to work on this. Everybody's got to work on their footwork. But Drake May, but when he throws it well, it's off the charts. It's as good as anybody can throw the football. But it's not as consistent as you'd like it to be. I'd like to see him be a little smoother throwing the football, things like that. But overall, makes a lot of outstanding plays, and he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. I don't know what's going to happen to him in the draft. I mean, he's one of those guys that could be the third pick to New England, or he could go much later in the first round. So we'll see. But there's a lot to look at and like about Drake May. And he's been raked over the coals, like I said. So it's a tough process now for these college kids coming to the NFL as quarterbacks.
Scrutiny upon scrutiny. Top 10 players going in the draft. Yeah, we're going to find out who those top 10 will be on Thursday night. We want to thank Phil Simms for joining us, the 2-time Super Bowl champion and first-round draft pick himself. Great stuff, Phil. Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it.
I can do better next time. Sorry.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
They're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The 2024 Stanley Cup odds, the Hurricanes remain the favorite, followed by the Panthers and the Rangers. Interesting that they all are coming from the similar side of the bracket.
While the Oilers have the top-end talent, I still don't think they have enough depth, and Stewart Skinner does not scare me in depth. So I will take a long series from the Oilers and the Kings, and ultimately I think the Stars are the ones coming out of the West for the Stanley Cup.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
The Philadelphia 76ers, who are the second best team in this Eastern Conference by a mile when Joel Embiid is healthy. That's just what they are. So now, if Giannis isn't available, the Bucks would be dogs in the series.
He ain't sleeping on that air mattress anymore. He's got a regular king-size bed, a posturepedic, whatever they call it, a Sealy's, whatever they do, those things. He's ready to roll. Dominating tonight.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
From the NFL draft to the NBA. Look, a lot of things went down last night. A lot of things are going to go down tonight. Donnie Rightside, Davis Maddock. It's the early line, Sirius XM channel 159. Now we bring on the coach, James Young, because his New York Knicks are now up 2-0 over the Philadelphia 76ers. Coach, how are we feeling this morning?
Divine intervention. Maybe my good mother blessing down on the Knicks. Some wild stuff happened in that game, but as much as the wild stuff happened, we got to talk about some of the things that I thought that Philadelphia did extremely poor down the stretch of that game, particularly that last 30 seconds.
Absolutely, Coach. Let's get right into it. The New York Knicks, 104-101, now a 2-0 series lead over the Philadelphia 76ers. The Sixers, again, had a very good first quarter, didn't play all that well for quarters number 2 and 3, came back in the fourth quarter, had a 5-point lead with one free throw to go for Kyle Lowry with under a minute to go, and they lose this basketball game. You take a look at Joel Embiid, 34 points in this game, 39 minutes played, 10 rebounds, 6 assists. Tyrese Maxey under the weather, 35 points, not good enough. Boy, this is a team concept win for the New York Knicks. They just keep battling, Coach.
Yeah, they just keep battling. And if you think about it, Donnie, Joel Embiid was absolutely fantastic. But Joel Embiid was also a guard last night. When I talked about yesterday, I needed him to be a big. He needed to be inside. You could still see the explosiveness isn't there. He's struggling to get up and down the court. And the fact that he had 10 rebounds, folks, that was outstanding. He also had none in the second half. So to me, they got beat up by the fact of, let's be honest, Brunson has not been good. The two best players on the floor are Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, by a wide margin. The problem is players 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 are all coming from New York. So to me, the Knicks are beating you with the sum of their parts, and they're beating you in regards to just being mentally tougher than you. That game was about toughness. It wasn't about prettiness. And I just thought Philadelphia, you can't cough up that lead, okay? And you made up a good point that no one's talking about. Kyle Lowry did miss that second free throw that could have made it 102-96. So now you go down. There's a loose ball on the floor. You don't get it. Jalen Brunson hits a 3. Then you turn around, the ball gets inbounded. Now, yes, could there have been a foul call? Absolutely. You could have called the foul and Tyrese Maxey pushing off. But then you get to real quickly the fact that Nick Nurse, one, didn't burn his timeout to advance the ball to the front court. You never take the ball out of bounds in a desperation shot like that when you know you can advance it to midcourt. And so if a steal happens, you can at least get your defense set. Maxey has the ball on his left side. Why isn't he putting on his right side where it's away from Josh Hart and he doesn't get picked off? And then lastly, Isaiah Hartenstein goes flying from the top of the key for an offensive rebound. No one boxes him out. They give up the 3. A comedy of errors by Philadelphia in the last 30 seconds.
A comedy of errors. You don't love to see it from a Nick Nurse coached team. Your New York Knickerbockers they're doing the same thing that they were doing in the regular season. Josh Hart just like begging for more minutes. Josh Hart wants the game to be longer. I mean, he probably wanted the game to go to overtime so he could play 52 minutes instead of his prescribed 48 minutes. I guess my question for you as it pertains to the series price is, Coach, do you think Embiid is a good enough player, MVP caliber, maybe the best player in the NBA, second best player in the NBA, to look at this 0-2 deficit and say, you know what, guys, I got this. Get on my back. I got this. Because remember, Embiid, great regular season player. What are your great postseason memories for Joel Embiid? Where has been the Joel Embiid nuclear, get on my back, I'm taking us to the top of the mountain postseason effort? There really has not been one. Do you think he has that in him?
Honestly, I think he does. And as a Knicks fan, they're up 2-0. This could be 0-2. Very, very easily could be 0-2. And they're going to Philadelphia, which is going to be a raucous environment. I will say this, and I'll put this right now, and I'm a Knicks fan. I'm going Thursday night. There is no way in hell the Knicks are winning that game on Thursday night. There's no way. One, the officials aren't going to let it happen. Two, that place is going to be, they're going to be at Chicky and Pete's. Donnie knows about Chicky and Pete's. They're going to be at Chicky and Pete's from like 3 o'clock in the afternoon getting stewed up. That's going to be a raucous environment. For that price, Davis, I think that I honestly may take a little bit of a stab at plus 370. The fact that I think that this could take place. Now, if you don't think that Philadelphia can come back, I still think this thing is going 6 or 7 games. So if you want to take it both ways and find a way, there's no way the Knicks are going to win 4 in a row. Philadelphia's going to get at least one, if not both of these in Philadelphia to get it 2-2 heading back to New York. This is going 6 or 7 games. There are ways you can do this without taking Philadelphia to win that you can make yourself a little bit of money. 6, 7 games. Take them both and you can find a way because it's going to go one of those 2.
Got to find a way here. The Los Angeles Lakers last night lose at the gun going up against the Denver Nuggets, 101-99. But you can just look at that final score and be like, oh, that was a tough loss for the Lakers. And then when you figure out, Coach, they had a 20-point lead and a double-digit lead heading into the fourth quarter and weren't able to close the door. For some reason, the Lakers just can't beat the Nuggets, Coach.
My best bet every day that the Lakers play the Nuggets. Nuggets second half. It's like clockwork. They run out of steam because of Darvin Ham. Mr. I'm not bringing any adjustments to guarding Nikola Jokic. Well, how about the fact that 8 of the last 9 possessions Denver scored? They let Jokic do whatever he wants. I understand he can pass the ball, but you got to find a way to not let those 2 beat you. Make someone else make a shot. I know Michael Porter Jr. made a big 3, but make Aaron ACP, someone else beat you. You can't allow that to happen. And then lastly, folks, I know he shot well from 3. Why is D'Angelo Russell in the game late? I would have had Reeves or I would have had Vincent guarding Jamal Murray. No switch like it happened. So Jamal Murray got to his sweet spot on the right wing for that game-winning jumper.
Tough scene all the way around for the Lakers, too. Hit it, Davis.
Go ahead, Donnie.
I'll take it from here.
At the end of the day, what do we want the Lakers to do? They're not as good of a team. They have the oldest player in the NBA as their best player. Anthony Davis, a terrible matchup against Nikola Jokic. I'm with you, JY. We are going to continue to bet the Denver Nuggets second half spread. We're also going to take the Nuggets potentially to win the NBA championship as the best team in the Western Conference. Thanks for your time, JY. We're going to go ahead and run into break here real quick.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
They're still the best. They're still the champs. Everyone wants to crown the Celtics the champions, but that's not the way it works. They got to beat them. And, they got to get through the East, which isn't going to be fun to begin with. Everyone thinks it's so automatic.
If it's just Boris is kind of losing his power, if whatever his tactics have been, yeah, move on.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
To the 2024 Stanley Cup odds, the Hurricanes remain the favorite, followed by the Panthers and the Rangers. Interesting that they all are coming from the similar side of the bracket.
While the Oilers have the top-end talent, I still don't think they have enough depth, and Stewart Skinner does not scare me in depth. So I will take a long series from the Oilers and the Kings, and ultimately, I think the Stars are the ones coming out of the West for the Stanley Cup.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
The Philadelphia 76ers, who are the second best team in this Eastern Conference by a mile when Joel Embiid is healthy. That's just what they are. So now, if Giannis isn't available, the Bucks would be dogs in the series.
He ain't sleeping on that air mattress anymore. He's got a regular king-size bed, a Posturepedic, whatever they call it, a Sealy's, whatever they do, those things. He ready to roll. Denominating tonight.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
No time to waste, people. Triple header tonight in the NBA. Tip times, East Coast, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, and 10 p.m. Eastern. Let's get it started right away at 7:30 tonight, Coach. The Phoenix Suns and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Opening line at the FanDuel Sportsbook, -4. That is now shifted down to -3 with a total of 212. Minnesota looking to take that 2-0 commanding lead over the Suns. Can the Suns even it up before heading back to the Valley?
They're going to need to get way better performances by a number of guys. One of them, Grayson Allen, who is now questionable. That's why if you look around, I looked at FanDuel. I don't think I saw props on him just now. So we'll see what happens with Grayson Allen. But you got to get a far better performance out of Devin Booker. Devin Booker shot 5 of 16 from the floor. You got to get a better play of Yusuf Nurkic, Donnie, a guy that got thoroughly outplayed by Rudy Gobert. And I do think they got to shoot the ball more from three. This team does not have a lot of three-point shooters besides Grayson Allen. They have to take more three-point attempts. I think this game is close. I'm going to go with Minnesota on the money line, and I think Phoenix will hold serve when they go back to the Valley.
I think you are. I think you're probably right. Anthony Edwards, it's hard to tell how many shots he's going to be able to get off over Kevin Durant. I think that Durant will probably get the better of that matchup. I think this one is we're likely to get a longer series there. What about Phoenix and what about Dallas and Los Angeles? Kawhi Leonard, I think, is probably not going to play. That is being indicated by the Mavs being favored here. Luka got his numbers in the end, Coach, as you know. I mean, Luka was always going to get his numbers in the second half of that game. I don't really see any real adjustments for the Mavs to make other than trying to not play Kleba as much, maybe going with some of their larger lineups, trying to get Gafford, not in foul trouble and having Gafford and PJ Washington out there. Do you think game one was a bit of an aberration and Luka is going to be able to, get his shots off in the first half this time? Or do you think the Clippers are going to be able to take care of business again?
Well, you said it best right there. Number one is Daniel Gafford. His rebounding prop, guys, is 5.5. I love this tonight. Over 8 of the last 15 games. Big bounce back spot where a guy had no rebound and was the core of that defense, Davis. So if you want to correlate this, I think you look at Gafford over 5.5 rebounds and then turn around and take Zubac to go under. I think it's 11.5. I think it's his rebound prop tonight if you want to play the two of them together. I think Kyrie is going to continue to be the facilitator. His rebounds plus assist prop is at 8.5. He's gone over 10 in the last 15 games, 11 last game, over 4 straight versus the Clippers. I think he continues to do a little bit of everything for Dallas. And I do like Dallas to come back. Listen, 8 points in the second quarter, Davis, it's not going to get it done. They played far better in the second half. I think this is a prideful bunch. This will be 1-1. It's -130 on the money line. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just take the Dallas Mavericks on the money line, -138 to win at the Clippers.
I got the Mavs in that series, so certainly I would love that to go 1-1 before they head back to Dallas. I tell you, a team that most people were trying to bury early on was the Milwaukee Bucks, who wasn't ready to get buried? Dame Lillard's 35-point outburst in the first half to pace the Bucks on a victory over the Pacers. We come into this game. Overnight line was -2.5 as a favorite towards the Bucks. That's now down to 1, so some love for the Pacers. I hated everything that the Pacers did in game number 1. Coach, how can the Pacers win this game in game number 2, or is it just too much Bucks at home here?
Play with pace. They played way too slow. They played a half-court game, and they got suckered in. And that's why the amazing thing, guys, is the over-under of this game is 220.5, I do believe. It was 230.5 in game number 1. So you mean to tell me they're going to drop this 10 points against a team that's one of the fastest teams in the NBA and knows that they got to run? No, thank you. I like over 220.5 in this game tonight. I think it gets over 230. And look for Tyrese Halliburton, who only took 7 shots in game number 1, over 18.5 points. He's got to get going. I don't trust no damn Pat Beverly to slow him down. He gets going tonight. Give me Tyrese Halliburton over 18.5 points and give me over 220.5 in the game.
Coach, taking a look at an anomaly last game. 35 points in the first half for Damian Lillard. Didn't score in the second half. Do we expect him to get 30-plus points tonight if you're betting it?
I don't think it's 30-plus. I think it gets 25 or so. But the game should be a high pace, so it should benefit Dame a little bit. I just think this is a big spot for an Indiana team that looked way too young for the moment. I think they bounce back tonight.
Triple header tonight. Suns, Timberwolves, followed by the Pacers and the Bucks and the Mavericks and the Clippers. Exciting times. And by the way, the highest line tonight, -3. We're looking for competitive shots in all 3 of these games tonight. He's the coach, James Young, breaking it all down for us. Congratulations to his Knicks up 2-0 in the series. We'll talk to him again shortly. Thanks for coming on the program. Face the Public is next.